Hello and welcome to Stories Lived, Stories Told, a dialogue-driven podcast exploring how to create better social worlds through better communication. I'm Abby, and today I invite you to join me in conversation with the participants of the American Society for Cybernetics 2026 conference, which took place at the beginning of August, just recently in Ouro Preto, Brazil, as we take a communication perspective on cybernetics. To take a communication perspective is to consider what we are making and how we are making it through our communication practices. It means seeing ourselves as active participants with choices about how we show up to each other. It is paying attention to patterns, context, stories, and relationships to better understand how meaning gets made. It is embodying curiosity, mindfulness, collaboration, and dialogue to co-create better social worlds. So, whether the topic of today's conversation is familiar to you or not at all, the idea is that by looking at communication instead of through it, in this conversation and in all that we do, we expand our collective imagination through both storytelling and story hearing, revealing new ways of seeing and being for all of us. This is a very special episode as I continue my journey through live podcasting. I'm really excited to have gotten the opportunity to do yet another participant podcast at the American Society for Cybernetics recently. I just had the best conversations, and as also a first-time attendee of the conference myself, learned so much from the people that were there that I got to speak to. So I hope that you enjoy this collection of conversations that are just meant to be representative of the diversity of ideas and backgrounds and perspectives that were present at this gathering. And as I said, whether you're new to cybernetics or not, I think you'll find some really interesting and valuable stories in this episode today. So without further ado, let's begin this ASC participant podcast. I just want to talk about anything you want to talk about related to this conference, your experience of it, cybernetics. As I've already shared with you, I'm brand new to the world of cybernetics. Okay. So my kind of through line as a question for doing this podcast is I'm just starting simply and seeing where it leads me of just what is cybernetics. Right. I want to hear from as many people as possible. Okay. How they would describe cybernetics, because I alluded to with you and Audrey earlier that my work is related to a specific theory of communication called coordinated management of meaning. Okay. And so it is about this, this language that we've already heard a couple times. Right. Speak of like the multiple realities and the observation and the, how do we coordinate together and in our interpersonal communication, in our relationships, in every interaction we have, right? How do we coordinate across those different realities? Because even though we're all here for cybernetics, it's great to check in with each other, right, to say, well, what does that mean to you? Because your experience of it could be very different than someone else's experience of it. So just to start, I wonder if you would tell me your name and introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Keely Mitchell. I live outside Philadelphia. I'm a college professor at a local college right outside the city, and I teach business and legal studies courses.
And what brings you to this conference?
So I was invited to speak on one of the tracks. I was not familiar with cybernetics, so I'm a newbie. So the idea when I first heard about cybernetics, I was like, well, I don't do that. Mm-hmm. But then as I delved deeper into it, I said, well, I already have a degree in law. I practice law. I have a business degree, and now I have a PhD in human development. Like, I'm dealing with people and communicating with them all the time. And there is these different parallel realities that we experience when we're communicating. Yesterday when we were listening to the gentleman in track 7 play the guitar, Carlos, and it triggered my memory of a documentary where there were musicians talking about how everyone experiences the music differently. I might hear I don't know, the higher pitches and someone hears lower pitches and that's what we focus on, or someone just listens to the lyrics. And I'm like, that is how we communicate. Like you could say something and everyone has heard a just slightly different version of it, or watch something and people didn't necessarily see the same thing. And that fascinates me, but it also explains my daily dealings, whether it's with students or colleagues. We're having constant parallel realities that we have to figure out how to communicate.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah, even beyond just there being multiple realities, a question that kept coming up for me again in the track that we both attended yesterday of we heard a couple different people present on different projects or research papers or games they were developing, and I just wanted to know more about what does this do? What does it make?
Right.
In that social constructionist way of when we put something out in the world, when we say something to another person, when we come together, it makes something.
Right.
And then it has this afterlife. It lives on for us.
Right.
So I know you already referenced to me that you are excited to go back to your students with everything you will have learned this week. I'm curious about when you say, I went to a cybernetics conference, this is what it's about.
Right.
I know you're also new to this world of cybernetics, but what is your impression of what cybernetics is or about or means or does or makes so far?
Well, one thing I like is the discussion around observation.
Yeah.
So I learned in getting my PhD, and I do ethnography and I do narrative interviews. I'm not a quantitative person. But I realize I am an observer. So in my research, which is something I'm particularly interested in, I'm observing people who are aware that I'm observing them, like a full disclosure, but then it's coming through my lens.
Yeah.
So the idea of what I'm observing, aware that I'm being observed, and then that information that comes back to me of people who know I'm observing them, so they choose what I know, I'm sorry, I feel like a tongue twister.
No, I'm with you.
We're constantly creating the conversation going back and forth. And the more that they give, I might share something of myself. And so then that kind of takes the conversation to someone else. So then I'm like, well, then what's being left out? Because it's constantly through my lens and how I respond and they respond. And so even earlier, when we were listening to the gentleman talk about the history of the land, we started talking about whose history, who gets to choose. And then there was this idea of control, right? So in this particular conference, bringing up AI, I started thinking of AI as a system. Who gets to control the system, which then AI only knows what we put into it.
Yeah, right.
Right? So when we put in, if you don't know, AI is only communicating with something has put into it, and then that's controlling the conversation. So if someone who represents a marginalized group, my participants are generally marginalized people, our voices aren't heard.
Yeah.
So it's like going back to my students of like, please pay attention to whose voice you're listening to. And then if you know whose voice it is, does that impact your way of thinking? So that was a really long-winded way.
I'm with you, yeah.
But I think that's what cybernetics is like, waking up in me and then having the ongoing dialogue. Like it's making me realize dealing with world issues, whatever it is, we have to be in conversation because you can't be siloed.
Yeah, it feels like a real skill to me to learn to appreciate, especially if we're at a conference like this. And the very first session we attended yesterday was about the history of this organization. And there was a lot of like name dropping, all the people that have been so like integral to how this organization and this field has developed. And it's very easy to go, oh, that's the story, that's the history.
Right.
You know, when there's someone on a stage, literally, in our case,
Right.
on a stage, we're in the audience.
Right.
And you have that transmission of information, but it's a real skill, I think, as a listener or as a learner to hear one story and see it in the context of many stories, you know?
Right.
That even within the same shared experience, there are exactly what you're saying, a lot of different perspectives depending on who's telling the story.
Right.
And so we were talking about story, we're talking about bias, the words that I use is story,
Right.
bias, perspective,
Uh-huh.
point of view, whatever is all kind of, synonyms in this moment. And I've kind of encountered people that are like, oh, if you have bias, you need to erase bias.
No,
But there's
we also have bias.
exactly, it's like the point is not don't tell a story from a perspective, just be aware that when you tell a story from your perspective, there's other perspectives out there. So it's like I guess the question is like, can you zoom out on yourself
Right.
to see yourself as part of this system of
Right.
stories, multiple stories within yourself, multiple stories between other people. So that's for me where I'm kind of coming at cybernetics of that is something that it could also offer us, that
Right.
zoom out.
Yeah, the zoom out. Yeah, I tell my students, we are all biased. We all have perspective.
Right.
I mean,
It's not wrong to
prejudices.
have a perspective.
Right. I meant
Yeah.
prejudices, and it could be anything like you're against polka dots or something, something as simple as that. But being aware of how that bias or prejudice might influence your thinking, and then kind of questioning, well, is this bias justified in this particular situation? Like polka dots. Like if someone walked in and wears polka dots and then I have like an aversion to them, then it's like, well, maybe I don't have an aversion to the person. Maybe it's my bias against people who wear polka dots and I'm not giving that person a chance to be heard.
Yeah.
So like that's what cybernetics is waking up. And I'm coming to it as a newbie with the conference. But then I'm like, but wait, I've kind of been studying this already. And I forget who said it yesterday in the opening, that many people, when they come to cybernetics, realize that they've already been doing cybernetics. It was something like that. And then even the different perspectives, what was it, Elena and Larry, and they were talking about, I think Claudia asked them about tension.
Yeah.
And Larry talked about a workshop or music, and there was like tension around that. And then Elena was like, well, there was someone like passing out flyers and trying to use his own world money. Which I need to know more of that story. And then Larry went, oh yeah. And was like right there.
Yeah.
Like, what their focuses are. So if we only heard from Larry, we would have thought that was the only tension.
Yeah, right.
Whereas then once I heard Elena's, I was like, Larry, how did you miss that? How is that not vocal, right? So yeah, that's something I want to definitely challenge in myself and my students. Like I'm always writing from the perspective of these people haven't had a voice, but I also need to remember there's a broader context within what's going on.
Yeah.
And so
context within context,
within context,
absolutely endless.
Yeah, because I study migration patterns. And right now I've been studying Black Americans who move abroad, but then more Black women tend to come out and tell their story. And it's like realizing, well, if you only hear from them, then you might be missing the experience of, say, Black men. Yeah. And then I want to think about how does my research expand out to maybe LGBTQ who try to move abroad or any other marginalized group. Like, what is their experience and does it translate? So kind of like, if we get everyone's perspective, we can start trying to heal the world.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's like what this experience has been, which I love.
Yes.
The only thing is, we're around like-minded people. So how do we do it when we're back in spaces where if you say cybernetics, people be like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And then be able to use those tools and then kind of spread it. That's the challenge. I think here it's a little bit easier. Yeah.
Well, my hope with the podcast is that more people will listen to this episode, which again will be a compilation of many stories. And we'll be introduced to cybernetics that way. Again, that's why I'm going so basic. What is cybernetics, to try to capture anyone who might listen, who like you just named might go, what is, I've never heard of that. Robots? That someone said that to me last week when I said I was coming here. I was like, not exactly.
That's kind of what I thought. I was like, technology, robot, like what? And
and here we are. But yeah, any final words you want to say?
No, all I was saying is who's ever listening, be open-minded. I think our society's become so closed-minded, like,
Mhm.
and people want to stay in their bubble. And I'm like, no, I'm like, get out, meet new
Yep.
people, be open-minded, have the tough conversations. Because you might just realize we all are kind of saying the same thing, maybe just in different ways, or we
Yeah.
have more in common.
Yeah.
Yeah, like track 7 made me realize that because I
Yeah.
sat in there and I was like, algorithms and stuff like that's not what I do. But then I started listening and I'm like, okay, get
Yeah,
I can
right.
still connect
That's
with
how I felt.
what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, Keely. I'm kind of going basic also because I'm a newbie to cybernetics and want to talk about what is cybernetics in your words. You know, we've heard from a couple people who have run sessions of what cybernetics is in their words, and I want to get a sense of what it means to everyone who's here. So, you know, textbook definition or not, what does cybernetics mean to you? So I wonder if you would introduce yourself, whatever you'd like, you know, say your name, whatever you'd like to share.
Okay,
And we can talk about
wonderful.
what is cybernetics and what brings you here.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Bruno. I'm a PhD candidate at the Technological Institute of Aeronautics here in Brazil. I'm doing my PhD also with colleagues from the Politecnico di Milano because they have a new space observatory. So I'm using cybernetics to understand how space governance is evolving.
Wow.
How we are organizing since UN soft laws that are coming, like the Artemis Agreement that became more popular with the mission around the moon. And I came up with cybernetics and bringing my own definition, how we are organizing and how we should be better organized towards a national identity or a global identity, bringing this discussion for space. And also makes it possible to understand the pathologies and the future possibilities we have in this field. So that's how I'm working with.
Yeah.
So cybernetics brings a channel to bring different scientific communities together.
Huh.
AI, software development, space governance, and that becomes an equal language to study this topic, right?
Interesting. If I can add one more
Please.
field, my world is interpersonal communication. So what we're doing right now, relationships and cybernetics has been really fascinating to me in terms of, you know, yesterday we heard about the history of ASC as an organization.
Yeah.
And Larry used the language of ruptures and repairs, and Claudia talked about productive friction. And it's all of these things that you see in interpersonal relationships, as well as at an organizational level. And so I really like this balance of juggling, thinking on both levels, this really small, you know, so this moment, you know, you say one thing, I say one thing, we're looking at each other, I'm making sense of what you're saying, and I respond based on what you know, turn by turn by turn, that really small level, and then also zoom out to the systemic level and see that there's a lot of the same things are happening on both of these levels. And it's, I think, something to learn from in terms of how do we learn to move through that? How do we, you know, and what I'm hearing about you saying in your work, how
Yes.
how it's we learn to how we do something together in a space, especially something like space governance is a totally uncharted territory. You know, how do we choose to move through something new together?
I think that's the beauty of cybernetics, as we are doing right now, sitting at the very same table, talking, because for space we need to bring into discussion the militarization of space, of course, space sustainability. We have the entrepreneurs that founding and funding their own business. So there are several dimensions. The scientific one, of course, for civil purpose. So there are a lot of dimensions on this table, but for sustainable development goals also. So there are different topics. There are different visions about what to do with space and how it could benefit, of course, our society. So I think cybernetic brings a call for us to talk, right? To understand your needs, to understand your limitations, and also this power dimension and who is doing what, and this influence, this global arena, what is happening, and through cybernetic lenses, we might get a view and a sense of how it's developing, how it's deploying in the global arena, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious what you think in terms of the field that you're in, of how cybernetics also helps with complexity, not in terms of erasing complexity or simplifying it, but giving us the tools to navigate it, to lean into it. That the conversations I imagine you're having, just from my perspective, sound like they're probably incredibly complex. You have all these different interests, you have all these different perspectives, and you have to maybe teach people or bring people along with you to like lean into that complexity, to navigate it together, rather than just going, oh no, no, I'm not even going to try to touch that, it's too complex.
I think that's the beauty and the power of variety, understanding this amount of states that a system might have, and also those possibilities, those future possibilities around this topic, and also understanding why it is a future possibility for my country, for my company or not. Now, what happened in the past that's not enacting, not make me able to have it as a current possibility for development, as a project, as a nation, as a company. So that's how I see this connection between variety as exploring those possibilities on the table and understanding why. Is it a possibility for us or not?
Yeah, I'm thinking, you're reminding me of yesterday in the opening session, Larry mentioned how cybernetics and how the American Society of Cybernetics defines success and failure, that is subjective for us to decide. And so if you have this approach of experimentation, then there's almost no failure because everything is about learning. So I'm wondering if that feels resonant with your experience of, we might not get the outcome we wanted, or it might be different than we thought, but it's not failure. It's teaching us something and we're still moving forward or onward.
I think it's a learning process. How, of course, I'll bring this topic to space governance, but since a level of scientific development, entrepreneurship, what should be doing? I think what the nations are doing regarding the new space and what we're calling it, it's a learning process, but what we learned should be discussed together, right? Different communities. As, for example, for science and technology, what does it mean for education? What does it mean for defense? What does it mean for health? And the use of space technologies, for telecommunication, and that's becoming each day more common, right? More popular, Starlink and so on. So I think, once again, that's the call, I think, from cybernetics to discuss, right? Into different communities, to give them a voice and hear them. And of course, around it, build a national identity, cohesion. My studies regarding space, it seems that we have a lack of identity. What should we be doing as we're talking here? Should I create our own Elon Musk? And should we have our national space hero? Should we go to the moon and join the Artemis mission? Should we be planning something around Mars? Deep space. So there are plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of variety in this ecosystem. But what's your national choice? Or ecosystem choice? And why? That's the topic that I've been studying through cybernetic lenses.
Interesting. Well, thanks, Bruno. Any last words you want to say about cybernetics?
I think it's a knowledge field that should be more spread. I'm talking from a Brazilian perspective. There are few institutions teaching about it. The books are expensive, and it's great to have this conference here this time in Brazil to help to spread. Because my perception, also during the conference here, each time that you you meet a student, they say, whoa, it was a watershed moment. It changed my research line, for example. Once I've heard and understood what cybernetic is, it changed the perspective as a researcher or as a professional. So I think we could work and should work spreading more this kind of knowledge through the world, I would say.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruno. First of all, I am brand new to the world of cybernetics, so this is capturing my inquiry into what cybernetics is. I come from this is the CMM Institute is I direct, and CMM is Coordinated Management of Meaning. It's a theory of interpersonal communication that is about the way we coordinate, the way we manage and make meaning together. And so we've already heard that this week. I think that's a very cybernetic idea that there's multiple realities, and those realities, those stories are socially constructed together. So this podcast will be a collection of these short conversations where I'm really just wanting to hear from people about your experience of this week, but also more broadly, like, what is cybernetics in your words? Because yes, we're all here for cybernetics, but that maybe means something differently or looks different, or we apply it differently in each of our own contexts. So to start, I wonder if you would just introduce yourself and say what brings you to this conference.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My name is Vasily. I'm originally born in Russia, but for like last around 15 years, I live in China. So I also pretty new to the world and the community of cybernetics. Actually, I think the first time I really start to pay attention to it, it was around like a little bit more than like 1 year ago when my friend recommended me one of the book of the Confluences. I did always work with the complexity, with like system theory, complex system. Yeah, my background is math, but my master degree is actually cinema. So I have like both of the work for like many years. I work as developer, like more like computer science. But for years, I also do like photography and like video production. Yeah, I was working. So I start to mix it all together. And so my day job actually, like I'm kind of artist. So I have like studios that like Sakaris, we based in Shanghai and in Canada. And now I have also office in Bangkok. So we're doing like public art installation, commercial installation, light, kinetic, interactive things. So anything what related kind of like new technology and the art. So because I always was like very deep to technology, my friends know me. I always like to question things, and I always kind of like to disagree sometimes. So that's also like, okay, I work with technology, but I always like kind of question, do we need to use it, or why do we use it, and how it gets used to, for what purposes? So I think this is bring me to more like philosophy recently. Yeah. Yeah, I work like way further like Triple, like Latour, and more like Deleuzean, like new materialism, like cybernetics. And this is actually kind of like my interest now, because actually, as you say, like here, like so many perspective. Yeah, it is. But to be honest, I already call this like different frameworks, theories. And I found a lot of them actually talking about the same things, but just in different language. Yes. Yeah, so a lot of they actually, most of them also have the similar kind of like birthplace. You see like all of them, at least like this three, they're all references to the Leibniz. And like, so that's how I come here actually. So I was not much familiar with like cybernetic by itself, but I would say I always was like around this. Yeah.
So what is when you go home and say, oh, I just attended this cybernetics conference, and someone says, well, what is that? How would you respond?
I actually quite like the definition that it was given in the first day lecture. Yeah, it's way of thinking. And I totally agree with this, because cybernetics, again, it could be applied to, it's just, yeah, the way you see on the world. And again, as I come from like more like triple O and like Timothy Morton, all this like hyper objects, that's what I think. Yeah, there are no like only one way to see the things. There are as many people, as many perspectives you're gonna like have, and there are no like true or fake perspective. It's all about just like it's all about the context, in which context, which perspective. Yeah, because it's not like okay, my experience and like local people experience here are different. None of them true because we just have like different background. For example, like the same like I have like cinema, like mathematics, it's easier. Yeah, it's like formal language. It's created language. But for example, if you talk about cinema, okay, we just watched like short movie here, but this movie gonna be like perceived totally different way.
Yeah.
And different cultures because it's all about kind of like your own world, your experience. So everyone see not what he want to see, but what he capable to see. Like everyone we have this kind of our limitation in perception. We have our limits in understanding. Yeah. It's like in Gödel's, yeah, like the paradox. You cannot get out of system. You never can solve the problem by looking out of system because you're always limited to the system. You cannot get some. So your perspective always like smaller, but they're like, if you go more back to cybernetics again and introduce like Karen Barat here, that who makes the decision in which situation, who is the observer, who is like being observed, because it's not just only one observer in the situation. Yeah, actually, it's where we make a cut, what is important, what is not important in the situation.
Yeah. The theory of CMM that I'm grounded in uses this language of participant observer. And I really like that, especially in the context of interpersonal communication, because it acknowledges that observation, you're perceiving, you're making meaning of everything, but you're also actively participating in making that meaning. And you have, I think Larry said yesterday in the opening, you act to increase choices. He said it more eloquently than that, but that's especially on a systems level, you're wanting to act so that you have more choices of how to act in the future. And so that element of choice, I find to be really central and really maybe taken for granted or overlooked in our interpersonal communication, because you just learn to communicate by how you communicate with your family or your peers at school and your communities. And there's not, I mean, I studied interpersonal communication and I'm in the vast, minority of people who had like a formal education around communication. But I was sitting in those classes saying, this is relevant for everyone. And so people need to be reminded they have the choices. They need to be reminded they have the tools and these opportunities to act into something that is admittedly very complex, but there are the tools that exist to help them through that. And so I wonder about cybernetics as like a tool or a toolbox, a collection of tools that does help us. You mentioned the complexity and that there are multiple perceptions of something like cinema. And that's not something to be reduced. I like it's a strength, not a weakness, as long as we can act better into the plurality.
Yeah, because I mean you cannot reduce these things, and again, we back to like if like we take back to afterpages, each of us is actually a closed system.
Yeah.
I communicate with you, but actually many of these like thinkers, they say like, no, communication, actually, I not deliver information to you. I just kind of send some information that kind of perturbs your environment. And based on your experience, you make meanings of it. So meanings, we are meaning making machine, and we always making meaning based on our information, our background, where we grow up, what you see. And actually what I'm saying now, you can interpret in totally different way. And I cannot control it. And this is kind of like our beauty also, this communication, in this way towards. But you're also saying, there is choices, but whereas the choice, there are also kind of responsibilities.
Yes.
Because that's where we make a cut. By making the choice, by making the cut, we decide, this is matter, this is important. And then we throw up anything that's not important. If you back to, again, like Deleuze and Guattari, they also have this kind of concept, because if you create the center, At the same moment you create the center, you create periphery.
Yeah.
You cannot create center without creating periphery. So you always exclude something, that where is the cut, like essential cut happened. What included, what excluded in this situation. And I think this kind of like part of my presentation actually, that how we can introduce a little like more like materiality and ethics to cybernetic, because for now I feel it's more like kind of in case of information and like complexity system, but every time you make a choice, every time you make a cut, you influence something, and often you influence someone, human on human, that have no possibility to respond to it. So that's where like every time I make a cut, I need to kind of course, like think who I am affect and in which way I affect. And that's where like, especially like I think it's important in this kind of thinking framework like cybernetic, because we're dealing with very complex problems usually, systems. And there are so many like things involved. So you change one thing a little bit and it's propagate all around system. But of course, we cannot calculate all this propagation. We cannot predict everything. It's going to be like paralysis. You cannot act in this way, but you still need to be able to responsibility in but it's again, it's not about who responsible, but about I create some opportunities for others to respond to it. In this way, do they want it? Do they don't want it? Or again, like if I do something with plants, it cannot like send me back anything. It does not have this privilege to respond me back. So as I say, like I'm pretty new in this. And it's another rabbit hole for me, and I enjoy it for now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I'm Olaf, originally Dutch. This week I'm flying in from Germany, and I've been part of the cybernetics and systems communities for about 40 years. Started as an academic. Last 30 years I was working in the private sector, so there was more applying it to practical problems, but I never lost the connection to where the theories and the new ideas are born and discussed and developed. And at this moment, this is my first live participation in an ASC conference in a country dear to me. I've lived in Brazil before, married to a Brazilian national. So I have an affinity with the country and have a view on how things function over here, as opposed to how things are being perceived in Europe and other parts of the world. Last couple of decades, I've been working in the financial sector.
And what is cybernetics? In your words, how would you describe that to someone who is brand new to cybernetics?
No, for me, cybernetics is offering tools and a method to see how a certain system, and you can define it in every way you want based on the interest that you have, how it behaves and how it develops in a certain direction, what factors can perhaps exert influence and control in that, and it helps you to see certain patterns develop or repeat, if you wish. As soon as you zoom in on a certain system, which you wish to understand better, you also immediately zoom out from a number of other factors. So that's for me one of the key questions and decisions if you want to use these tools. What is in focus and what is by definition out of focus? But you should never forget that what you're looking at is part of a bigger whole, and also contains other systems, perhaps at a lower level. So you can always think of how am I affecting these lower levels, and how am I affected by the bigger picture that I am part of.
Since your work has become so much about the practical application of these ideas, I'm curious about what you've seen that look like. How have you taken cybernetics from theory to practice? in the work that you've done?
So I've sought my applications mostly in the area of management and organization. How can we structure organizations? A couple of years ago, I had the honor of working at a Brazilian system of credit cooperatives, which is a bigger organization, but it functions from the bottom up.
Okay.
So you have local communities and their community banking, and they connect at a regional and national level. And there I was able to use systems concepts to think about what do these lower level cooperatives need to steer and develop themselves? How can they see the impact they are having on their environment in environmental sense, social sense? And do I need to kind of copy the same set of indicators to a higher level, or has this higher level other functions that maybe requires another way of looking at things and other indicators and other things to steer to? So that was very, very practical. And also, I used to work a lot in business associations that try to make supply chains more sustainable. So you have producers, you have the industry in the middle, you have at the end, you have brands, you have companies that make the final product, and each of them has interests, but also feels its own constraints.
Yeah.
So with the systems lens, a cybernetic lens, you can look at, okay, what do these different organizations, sometimes operating in different countries, what do they have in common? And if each works on its own, are they kind of neutralizing each other, or are they reinforcing each other? Are they cooperating? Or if they did certain things together, could they have more leverage? Could they have a higher positive impact on their environment?
Yeah, with this podcast that I do, it's called Stories Lived, Stories Told, is where this will be shared. For me, it is all about bringing theory into practice in terms of making ideas and conversations around those ideas more accessible. I studied interpersonal communication, which is a rich, incredible field. And so many people take their own interpersonal communication for granted. And so my experience was sitting in that classroom, those classrooms over years, and going, oh, why didn't I know that? Why haven't I heard of this before? Why don't people more widely know this? There are incredible tools and great language and theories and models that could have real implications in our real lives, not just in the textbooks. And so is an ongoing kind of exploration, inquiry for me of what does it look like to, find a marriage between theory and practice, that the practice is so deeply grounded in theory, and the theory also has that relationship to, they're not as individual entities. So I really appreciate coming together in a gathering like this and hearing about, just diverse ways that cybernetics is being used, and the ways of knowing, or the ways of thinking about the ways of thinking, these different layers I feel like we're able to get into together, which is in and of itself practice.
Absolutely. So, I've learned that language is a very powerful tool in applying systems. First of all, because words mean different things in certain contexts or in certain countries.
Yeah.
For example, the word control. If you're an engineer, you build a machine, or you have a technical project, you build a building, you need to control certain factors. If you use that in a situation where various actors come together, they may not completely know or trust the other one, but they have to address a common problem. Talking about control too early gives the sense that, there's certainly one who wants to dominate and wants to have control, and what is the other losing?
Yeah, the context really matters.
Yeah. So if you advance in using cybernetic tools or system tools, I learned that a key thing is you have to know when to be silent, when to listen, and when to shut up. And let people, a part of the process is also hearing how each of the participants perceives the system. because usually everybody is right from their own perspective.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that you immediately agree on what the key issue, or the key problem, or the key priority is. So you need a while to figure that out together. And in this first phase, you shouldn't intervene too much. If you start to manage it,
Yeah.
it is your perspective that you kind of impose on others.
Yeah.
And it usually isn't very helpful in getting an open dialogue on the key solutions and what needs to be done, or it can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious what you think about the theme of the conference, conversational confluences, because to me, I was very excited to see that was the theme, because this coexistence of multiple stories and perspectives, I think is, I don't know if I want to say a skill per se, but something we could probably get better at, of seeing ourselves and our perspective as one of, that zooming in and zooming out that you were talking about, that's happening at the same, you have the dexterity to kind of go back and forth in the moment and say, well, yeah, this is my story, so I'm going to share it. And it is what it is. And it's not wrong because you have something different. And at the same time, I want to be profoundly open to your story. And do we both understand they can coexist? Because I think, at least as someone who lives in the United States, there's a lot of tension around. I don't think people are great at understanding their experiences can coexist. That if someone has a different belief and experience, that can feel very threatening.
Absolutely. So, and there are a couple of ways to deal with this. And one is kind of leave everybody in peace and treat each other like ships passing each other in the night.
Yeah.
Everybody is sending his message and his story. And then at the end, you have a chain of loose stories.
Yes, yeah.
You can also not be too invasive in confronting the others, because that very easily kills the conversation. So from my perspective, what is great about these conferences, that there is a space to at least ask questions. If somebody proposes a certain research strand or works with a concept or comes to certain conclusions, the value is understanding, what did this person do? How did he use the cybernetic tools? What could he achieve and what could he or she not achieve with it? And you can ask questions to make each of the participants think, oh, this could have been done differently, for example. But you cannot, you need to withhold your judgment. And then usually you go home enriched by a lot of ideas and new concepts that you heard, and they become new tools for you. And then in the next cycle, you discuss what you have advanced. This morning we heard a couple of presentations from indigenous leaders, and heard something about the hardship they are confronted with every day. That's a harsh reality to some. And that's a reality that, for example, in Europe, coming from a European context, you are very far away from these phenomena because you don't have the indigenous conflicts in Europe.
Yeah.
And of course, we are also very aware that some of those conflicts that are there today, and we have to recognize that, maybe stem from how countries and populations dealt with each other 400 or 500 years ago, and it still hurts.
Yes.
And that's real.
Yes.
And we should think about that, I think, not because it's me, but if it's there and it's still hurt and it keeps the people apart, living together in the same area, that doesn't necessarily bring a lot. You have to kind of at least be able to talk about it. And the confluence theme, I think it's very well chosen, because it also reminds us that we have the choice for different things to exist simultaneously.
Yeah.
And not everything has to merge or needs to be combined or needs to come to an agreement or a partnership. So the integrity of some in society or certain groups is a factor where we could think, yeah, why why would I exert an influence on the other? Do I have a right at all to appropriate language or cultural artifacts or land from people who were there well before my ancestors were there? I believe at least leads to a deeper understanding.
I really appreciated the visual of the Rio Negro yesterday that they gave, which
Absolutely.
is one river in name, but starts as two rivers. And I couldn't begin to describe the scientific reason for why they don't truly mix, but they have, I imagine, different components, consistencies that they do that. They're truly two different colors, side by side. You can see that they are two rivers flowing together. And I really appreciated that visual as a metaphor for, everything you're saying of adopt that in our lives. That, we don't have to assimilate or, all become one. We can coexist and be different.
Yeah, and it reminds us that this is a reality and a possibility, and in practice or in politics or in corporate reality, you very often find that you have a speaker who shares the official story of the organization, and it can only be one.
Yeah.
And the history that led to there can only be one.
Yep.
And it kind of suppresses or marginalizes everything, all the richness that is also there. And in this conference, you have a little bit of an antidote against that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'm being reminded as you're speaking, one of the speakers this morning said, referencing the history in Brazil, that there was a time when it was kind of said, oh, okay, slavery is not happening anymore. We're done with that. That's over. But just because it was said didn't mean there wasn't an afterlife, that it lived on for everyone, truly that was, I imagine it's remained, but especially for the indigenous people that suffered under that, just saying it's over, it's done, doesn't take that away from the experience. So that, just what you were speaking about makes me think of just how, what we do, what we say, how we are together, what we make together matters, and the meaning of it lives on.
And talking about systems is something different than looking at what the system actually is or what it does. So you cannot change a whole reality only by pushing a certain story.
Yeah. Any last words you'd like to say, Olaf?
No, I enjoyed our conversation. I hope to see the final result with all the
I'll be sure
stories
to
together online. So
thank you.
I'm Andre Stachel, and I've been teacher and researcher, but my main way was complexity theory, systems theory, and then afterwards I came to Goethean science and phenomenology. And so I've been working with phenomenology in the social domain.
Yes.
And by pure accident, I met someone from the society. And he taught me about this happening. And she was talking about Edgar Morin, Maturana, and all these people which I have been working with, but I never saw them as cyberneticians, or it's just it was. And since I have this image that there are different paths to the same, and sometimes these masks that we put ourselves, I'm from this club or the other club.
Yes.
It separates us, but in an artificial way. And I guess it's more interesting to think what we have in common. So I said, let's do some phenomenological observation of the cyberneticians, and that's what I'm doing. And it has been a big surprise for me so far.
Yeah, what are you seeing so far?
So far, for instances, I was a little bit wary from a too technical approach to reality. Models and theories and mathematics.
Yes.
And then suddenly I heard already in the first day, people talking about Confluence, different voices. the biology of love and things which are not so technical, and particularly talking about art.
Yes.
And so I came to realize that everywhere there is a technical part and an art part to it. The technical part is trying to instrumentalize it to get some results and make it operational. But there's always the dimension of the invisible.
Yes.
Which cannot be reduced to a model and numbers, because the moment you make and from the phenomenology, I bring this idea that the world is always changing. And so the moment you make a judgment or you put it down into a theory, you're killing it.
Yeah.
Reality. And you have to maintain reality open and maintain your observation open. And then yesterday I went to a track which was basically organized by artists, and how artists are using cybernetical tools to create art, which is an open language, not a closed language.
Yes.
And that was very interesting for me, because I was thinking, having been a teacher for a long time, I was say, I came here because of the city tour, and I said, oh, that's a nice way of going to the Ouro Preto.
Yes.
So I said, that's an opportunity. I'm Brazilian and living here. So I said, let's put both things together. And so I came open to see what happens. And I was thinking, well, maybe if it's a really, a very technical conference and people are just doing the models, okay, maybe it's the last time I participate in such a conference.
Yes.
But then suddenly yesterday there were people from social movements speaking a different language.
Yes.
And all this diversity, this variety. And when they talked about Confluence, and so it has been so far a very nice surprise for me to see that they're trying to keep cybernetics open and not to close it down.
Yes.
And I guess there's a polarity, there's a tension between these two.
Yeah, I see it as both a strength and a challenge that as I've done, a couple podcast recordings so far already, and I'm saying, what is cybernetics? How are you describing cybernetics? I want to understand what it means to people. The definition seems a little slippery. It kind of, could fall through. It's a little more abstract. It is expansive, is what I'm learning, is that it can be applied in so many different ways, and it means things to different people. So I think that's beautiful, because as you said, it leaves space. And it could maybe be a challenge for people like us who are new to cybernetics and trying to get a grasp on it. You want to wrap your hands around it to understand. But I'm maybe having some similar experiences to you, that through these experiences, I'm learning what it feels like, what it looks like, how other people live into it. I work with a number of people who are improvisational musicians or performers, and they brought this language to me that I really value, of minimal structure. And I can see that like you said, it's not good if we're overly structured, if we're so deep in this theory of life and there's no room for anything else. But the other extreme is maybe also not great, of just no structure. So what is the minimal structure that this theory, the models and practices can afford us, so that within that we can improvise, we can play, we can relate to each other?
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting question. And I guess it's a balance. Not everything goes.
Yes.
And it's not, because then it's when it's too open, and when it's too close, it becomes orthodox.
Yeah. Yes.
And it becomes, and so it's as a musician, you can have jazz and you can improvise.
Yes.
But there's a minimum structure you have to follow and keep. Otherwise, it becomes just noise.
Yes.
And you can have free jazz, and you can stretch the more towards the openness, or you can have a very structured, I don't know, kind of jazz.
Yes.
And where is this limit? I guess everyone but certainly it has to do with recursivity, with
Yes.
complexity, with emergent properties,
Yes.
and processes and
Mhm.
change. And well, as I said, I came from phenomenology,
Mhm.
and then I mean, phenomenology. The difference would be that in phenomenology, you would not try to do this technical part in such a, you would
Yes.
you would just stay more in observation
Yes. Yes.
rather than trying to create a model
Mhm.
to trying to control what you observed.
Yes.
This may be a difference between those and maybe in cybernetics, and artists, for instances, they would use very structured
Mhm.
methods, but then to create randomly or emergent chaotic things.
Yes.
But it's difficult to put in words, maybe intuitively.
Mhm.
We can, as if you ask me, what is freedom
Mhm.
or what is love?
Mhm.
To put it in words
Yeah.
may be difficult.
Yes.
And for instance, I like Taoism and Tao Te Ching.
Mhm. Mhm.
They would start already. The Tao that can be named is not the real Tao.
Mhm.
The Tao that can be named is the mother of all things. And so the essence of what may be cybernetics cannot be named
Yeah.
and cannot be put in
That's
words.
a beautiful way to say that. Yes. You're reading my mind exactly because I was wanting to ask what it is that you see that just from the couple days of being at this conference already, is there anything apparent to you that cybernetics could learn from phenomenology, which I think you pretty much just answered, but I wonder if you have more, anything more coming to mind about that.
I would say they have a lot in common.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, what cybernetics maybe can learn is to know that every time you make a model or a structure, and yes, if I got it right, that's when he said, the moment something works, it's already obsolete.
Mhm. Yes, yes,
And that's a phenomenological perspective.
yes.
The moment you say something is like that, it has already moved elsewhere. And to be humble enough to recognize this and open enough not to try to stick to your model and say, no, this is reality, but model is always a simplification of reality.
Yes.
And I don't know, I was thinking this example of Chile with, and it's quite amazing to see that they try to do this at the national level, organizing and I was thinking, okay, but at the end it didn't work because of revolution and all the things. But I'm more an anarchist than a communist. And anarchists, they will trust in the self-organization.
Right.
While maybe, and the phenomenologists just try to observe reality as it is and see if things just go their own way. It is not so interventionist.
Yeah, it's really interesting for me to hear your perspective because phenomenology is something I've really just recently encountered I'm coming to this conference from the perspective of communication perspective, interpersonal communication and this social constructionist lens of we are making our social worlds, we're making our realities together. And it's been really fascinating for me to approach this conference and what I've been hearing through that lens of seeing both the really zoomed out version of this on a systems level of the organization of ASC itself, the field, the large field, that is becoming global of cybernetics as a whole, and then to zoom in, super zoom in to this moment.
Yeah.
And the turn by turn of how we meet each other in this space and why, to me, gathering like this is important because it, there's similar things happening on both levels. On that first day, Larry talked about rupture and repair
Yes.
for the organization of ASC, but that's also something that happens interpersonally in our relationship. So I think the question I'm coming to this conference with is, maybe very simple, but very broad of kind of what's going on, what's being made in these conversations we're having, in the theories and the models that, the conclusions people are coming to. Okay, what does that make for us? I feel very invested in the practical side of things, of the daily lives of people of, okay, well, how does that make the theory that my work is grounded in would use the language of better social worlds, with better, being up for us to define together of what that looks like. How does that contribute to better social worlds? How are we making those better social worlds? And I think, power that gives people to say, to go back to that language of participation, you are a participant, you're both a participant and an observer.
Exactly.
In the system, in the social world. There's things for you to take in and there's things for you to make. You have an active role in this, and there's a responsibility maybe, or a morality of how are you going to choose to act into it?
And I heard about second order cybernetics, and this is a key part of phenomenology, the self-reflectivity.
Yes, yes.
And to know that seeing is creating.
Yes.
And that the way we see, at the moment we see, we are creating the world. And to be aware that the way we see, or the different ways we see, we are creating different worlds.
Yes. What I like about the theme for this year's conference, the Conversational Confluences, is that it does speak to that, not just that there are multiple perceptions or perspectives of one thing, but that they all coexist. And what does it look like, I think, is the question for me, for us to act into a plural world. Can we, I'm from the United States, there's a lot of tension.
Yes.
A lot of polarization around, your way of life, your belief, your political views, your religious views, that's a threat to mine. And so I think it's a skill that I'll at least just speak for my context, people in the United States, and I imagine to varying degrees all around the world, could stand to practice a little more, seeing ourselves as one of many stories that can coexist.
Yeah, and then
rather than being a threat to me, which makes me not be able to be curious about your story. If I'm feeling threatened and defensive,
of course.
It makes something very different.
I mean, I guess that's the thing. I was working in phenomenology was precisely the idea of polarization, but in contrast to polarities, because polarities, they are everywhere. This confluence of these two rivers, that's a polarity. Us and me, or the separation and how to balance the polarities without one polarity wanting to control or suppress the other. That's the challenge.
Yes.
And for me, I with a group I was working with, we came to something which was very enlightening to me. When at the end we came to the idea that love is the capacity of balancing living with polarities.
That's beautiful, yeah.
And this, I guess that's a little bit the biology of love they were talking about.
Yes.
And so the opposite of love is polarization and fragmentation.
Yeah.
And there's a nice saying by a Brazilian poet, Vinícius de Moraes, musician too, where he say, life is the art of the encounter, although there are so many disencounters in the world, in life.
Yes.
So every time there is an encounter, and language is a way of trying to connect.
Yes.
And when we manage to enter into a dialogue, then there's an encounter, and then there's, in a certain sense, love happening. And every time we start to discuss, or cybernetic is the right one and phenomenology, or the other is the wrong one,
right.
This is not right, I have the way, this is the right solution, and this is the other solution that's bad. then we are entering in discussions,
Yes.
and which is the opposite of love.
Very interesting. Thank you. Is there any final words you'd
Oh,
like
no,
to say?
I guess it's a nice.
Thank you, Andre. Really appreciate it.
I'm Ana Baltazar, and I'm having contact with cybernetics for a long time. And my interest started with Ranulph Glanville when I was in London. I studied at the UCL, University College London, the Bartlett School of Architecture. I did my PhD there in the 90s. And Glanville was a great figure. And then we exchanged lots of emails. And so that was my kind of entry into the cybernetics. And I contributed with an article for this Cybernetics double issue that he organized in 2007, I think, which was the first ideas that we started to exchange about how we could understand design beyond, with a kind of a critique of capitalism and trying to bring the idea of anarchism and within cybernetics. So my interest is kind of tangential, not in the center of it. And I took part in some of the metaphor meetings and some, yes, one ASC meeting also and during the pandemics. And I think it's always quite inspiring to hear, to see how people are dealing with these issues and mainly how people are trying to see cybernetics for areas such as architecture design and how we can use this idea of meta projects or meta design and not keep just specializing more and more. So that's what interests me in these sort of meetings. But also I'm a bit frustrated with when we see how people, it is conversational, of course, but you see that we're always trying to offer insights to some other people, but you don't see so frequently people actually changing their own perspectives. So they're quite generous, of course, but I think this happens in all areas.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. So because when we propose something like that, the Confluence is not synonymous with conversation. We are having a conversation, not quite, but it might evolve to conversation. But in order to actually evolve into Confluence, it's a big step forward. And I think the idea of the conference was quite in the good place of a conference, but I can't see this really happening. I think what we start to do is kind of shaking a little bit the idea of a conversation towards conference, but it's very difficult to make it actually happen.
Yeah.
So when Mateus was asking what I thought about this, bringing some fresh positions of other people or traditional knowledge for this conference. And I thought it was great because Nego Bispo is no longer here, but we have many other traditional knowledge people that actually don't need cybernetics. But I think it could be a great thing if they kind of understood how this might be a tool, and people are going to kill me if they listen to that, because of course cybernet might be a perspective or a discipline, or if many people can see it in different ways, but I think it's a powerful tool to connect things and to try to put things kind of in a network of thoughts and into perspective, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's good if you like Stafford Beer, which is one of the people that I really admire, mainly the CyberSyn project, because even the team's integrity, things that actually they are not neutral tools. He's producing tools to more than to support creativity, but to face and to kind of contribute for people to be able to go beyond capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an anti-capitalist tool, but it might empower people to be able to move beyond capitalism. And I think maybe this is what is lacking a bit for what I have been talking about here with other people, is that many people, and including myself, we have ideas of what we can do with cybernetics, or how we can use it, or how we can analyze things using these, or even have different perspectives. But it's very important to have in mind who is the enemy, and it's the mode of production. And the mode of production is not changing with any tool. And people need to be aware of it, and to be aware that not only tools, but different epistemologies might help change it, but you need to be aware of what you want to change. So we are not going, like Stafford Beer, turning back to him, I think it's great when he was proposing the integrity as a possibility, not to have a kind of an assembly and have different issues and people would kind of lead the issues. But when you distribute people, like instead of believing in a horizontal thing for everyone, he was putting people together, and then people had different roles, and then you kind of circulate in different times, discussing different subjects. So this kind of contaminates everyone, and everyone becomes in a way aware of the whole thing without actually being in the same room discussing the same thing, or kind of listening to some people discussing. So it's a way of engaging people and involving people. So this sort of strategies or tactics, I don't know, I think they are quite empowering people to move beyond this capitalist idea. It's like, I don't like to say anti-capitalism or anti-anything, because to
But
be
beyond,
anti,
you're making an important
you
distinction there. Yeah.
you are in the same structure. You are not
Yes.
changing the structure.
Yeah.
A little bit like Larry was saying today, the difference between conflict and controversy, or
Yes.
something that you actually want to move the structure,
Yes.
to change the structure. So I think it's quite relevant. So what I feel in this, it's really good to be in this, to meet all these people, to be in this atmosphere. But I think sometimes it lacks a bit to understand what's actually the point, or who is the enemy.
Yeah.
And
You're making me think about when I am on year 5 of doing my podcast, and I've begun to say at the end of every episode, just because the episode ends doesn't mean the conversation does, because these ideas, they have an afterlife for us. So I'm curious about seeing maybe this conference as the beginning of a longer conversation, or one turn in a conversation that's probably been ongoing for many, many years already. What would your hope be for after this conference, for what people walk away with that does move us, as you've named, closer and closer to Confluence from where we're starting in conversation?
I think it's almost a hope that we can manage to actually put in conversation first, and then to make a confluence.
Yes.
The traditional knowledge and our scientific knowledge, and to kind of start scratch this scientific knowledge or all this sort of how can I say it? Like the paint that you have a kind of consolidations, a kind of a facade of our scientific knowledge that we kind of repeat things without actually thinking about it. And the way we manage to bring things up without actually living them.
Yeah.
So it's quite good when you see the traditional knowledge people talking about, they're not making a speech or with categories or with clear categories or different languages, or they are kind of telling us, describing a way of living.
Yeah. Yes.
So to put these things in perspective and to try and see how we can kind of be, take all this cloth of our scientific knowledge and talk more from the heart of what we actually believe, or how these actually influence what we do.
Yeah. You might not be as alone as you think, because I've heard other people this week in these conversations talk about cybernetics as an experience.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really beautiful, that if that is what people take away, they've maybe spent this week learning the language and the theories and the models, and then can they go experience it?
It would be great.
Would be really great. Yeah. Any last words you'd like to say about this week or cybernetics in general, or your work specifically?
Well, maybe one thing that I think bothers me, and something that I'm reflecting on it all the time, is like how we tend to be. I speak for myself. We tend to be contradictory with this living experience and with how we formulate it and write about it. And it's very difficult to have a sort of, like in the case that what I'm working with the indigenous people, the Yanomami, it's very difficult to write about it because it's a live and rich experience, and you have to put it in words.
Yeah.
And you leave lots of things outside of the possibilities that it opens. And we need to kind of frame it with the categories, the theoretical categories we have. So I'm learning a lot with Bruno Latour and Isabel Stengers, with this idea of instead of using scientific terminology, try to make good descriptions. So instead of framing it with theories and all, of course we are not without these theories. But,
Yes.
to manage to make very good descriptions, and the more we can kind of put everything we remember and on paper, it points out to something more, I don't know, more that can enrich more a conversation or a dialogue, or even if an indigenous people will hear it, even not read it, but listen to it. It would be more identify more than with categories that will bring from outside. In a way, it's like instead of analyzing things, it's trying to bring from experience what's actually happening. I think it's something very good for us to start this. We are not going to be equal, because I think no one is equal, but to be more able to start these dialogues and conversations, and to actually be able to arrive at Confluence.
Thank you so much, Anna. I really appreciate you participating.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, also the first AC for me.
and I just found it online as because I've been working on or with cybernetics for a bunch of years. I would say like probably 3 or 4 years about the time. But mostly as a, I would say, historian or from a historian lens to things.
Okay.
And also, I haven't been that much into contact with the American society or the American people generally, because I'm from Europe originally or from Germany, especially, and I've been more concerned about the local versions of cybernetics from there, I would say. But of course, I mean, I also know the giants, as they were called,
yes.
a bunch of times over here, like like the Norbert Wiener, all these people who are considered like the first generation of cyberneticians. But but I also like to contest this view a little bit. I like this
Please, yeah.
this narrative that's been told over and over, like the founding fathers and so on, in terms of origins of cybernetics that develop maybe in parallel, maybe in observation to the American developments at the same time. So maybe we can talk about this.
Yeah, that's
Whatever you want.
interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to know more about how you experience cybernetics in the context that you use it.
Yeah, I mean, experience. So I'm coming from architecture background. Like I studied architecture in Germany, and so I'm mostly interested in quite basically consequences for the material conditions, you could say, or for planning material conditions rather. And I think my first contact with cybernetics was via systems theory, which is related, of course, or almost the same in a sense, but which was a project I was writing on at the moment of the development of post-war universities in Germany, like the literal buildings, and in particular one building in a city called Bielefeld. You probably never heard of it, but it's like in West Germany, some mid-sized city, I would say. But I came through this topic basically through the architectural competition of this building, and the ideas that evolved around it. So in the committee there were different people. So there were more classic architects, or like people who tried to establish universities from the pre-war times. So like Humboldtian ideas and like a building up, like a very utopian idea of Bildung, or like of education. And there were like a new generation of people who try to establish a more systematic way of research and of education, and that also showed in a way in this competition or in this universities. And long story short, there's like this one professor called Niklas Luhmann, who's like a famous systems theory guy in Germany, not so well known actually outside of Germany, I think, mostly because of the translation issues. But that's how I came to this theme of like, how could like systems theory be spatialized or materialized in some sense? And that's also what happened in this university. And then Luhmann was in this committee, and he later became professor there and spread this theory also from this building, basically. That was kind of the first contract. So it was via architecture to theory in a way. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I am hearing some of my own story and yours, and that I also come to cybernetics through systems. And I came to systems through interpersonal communication, which is my field. It's just this, talking to people and how we are together one-on-one. And so it's been really interesting for me to begin to explore the relationship of systems and interpersonal communication, because the take on interaction that my work is grounded in is social constructionist, in that we're making meaning, and it's the smallest unit of the talking together, the turn by turn we make our
the
social
smallest unit of this theory of luminous communication. So I think that's like a basic
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, and I've been interested to come in contact here with how the word communication is being used. And what I'm hearing is what I would call a transmission model of communication. That's the language, at least in the field of interpersonal communication. That's like sender, receiver, message.
Yeah.
And that's so simple. That's so oversimplified, I think, for what's really going on. So it's really interesting to me that like reciprocal relationship of our communication in the processes of communication. That's how we create our social worlds, our realities, but also the social worlds we live in make how we communicate with each other. So the cybernetic lens, I think, is probably a little obvious of the, recursion and the feedback and the making and making more making.
Yeah.
It's the relationship there.
Yeah, for sure. That was also part of the idea of this university building, institution building. So the ideas form the environment in a sense, and the environments condition the thoughts as well. So
Exactly. I'm seeing a lot of people. There's obviously as you said, there's the giants of cybernetics, there's the theories and the models and the, papers upon papers have been written, research upon research has been done about cybernetics. And that's, to me, at least what this week's kind of been about, is learning more of those, for me at least. And then I'm interested in where people will go from this gathering, like what does it look like to live cybernetics or to take it back into your own world. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on what you feel like you're going to be walking away from this conference with.
Yeah, I will, first of all, I will have to have a insane long flight because I'm currently living in Hong Kong.
Very long.
On the other side of the world, practically. But I've been, I mean, I will continue study. It's literally almost, I'm doing my PhD there, so that's more or less my job to continue to be concerned about cybernetics and its history. But on my day-to-day life, if that's what you're asking, then I'm quite, since I'm quite aware now of these cybernetic stories, I'm also looking how this shows in China or in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So that's
it's very much, once you have the lens, it's hard to remove. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, and
the lens is cybernetic.
Yeah, and it's very obvious also in China, because everybody's just so concerned about or pushing this like this cutting edge technologies basically in all kinds of ways. So and again, you can also quite literally see this in like smart city projects in Shenzhen, for example, like the neighboring city of Hong Kong, where you have like extreme rapid city development. Like every week there's the newest, biggest mall or whatever, so that's unavoidable to like keep thinking of this maybe technology generally, but I like to, I know, I kind of prefer to think of it as from a cybernetic lens rather than just like AI or so.
Yeah. Any last words you'd like to say about cybernetics or your experience so far this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just very much enjoyed it. Yeah, I like the choice of this venue or the city.
Yeah, me
because
too.
It's like so old school in a way, like the like the wood is rotting basically while we keep talking about something rather future directed. So I kind of like the choice of this. And it's probably on purpose in some way. And I like the discussions around Stefan Beer. I learned some things there. I like the talk of Larry Richard this morning as well, but dialectical thinking in cybernetics. That's something I'm also quite concerned with in terms of China and East Germany, and there are these mixtures. So that's something will be continue thinking about. So
thanks so much.
Glad to be here. Yeah,
I really appreciate you sharing. Thanks for participating.
My name is Audrey Murphy. I'm currently finishing a doctorate at the Fielding Graduate University. Fred Steyer, who is my committee chair and my mentor at the university, was one of the coordinators for Track 5. I received an invitation to submit an abstract, and I did, and it was accepted. now I know that because of my practice as a STEM professional at NASA, and also the doctorate work, not only the dissertation, but the actual work, the courses that I took, prepared me. It laid a foundation for cybernetics. In the dissertation, I don't necessarily expand on second order cybernetics, but it does make reference to that discipline. So I'm happy about that. And I know more about how my research and my goals going forward will fit in. And so this is what brought me to the conference.
Will you tell me more about how you experience or use cybernetics in your work and life?
Well, like I said, you know, it's possible that I use it, but not in those terms.
Yes, yes,
Like
absolutely.
I was sharing a conversation with a group yesterday at lunch, and I said, I understood systems theory before I even knew that it was systems theory,
Yes.
you know, and I gave an example of a situation on my lawn, you know, believe it or not, in my plant life, you know, and so I'm thinking, you know, that's what's emerging for me. I may have been using it all along. In my dissertation, I specialize in metacognition. On the first night we were here, Larry gave a presentation and he said, thinking about thinking. That was one of the key terms, language of cybernetics. And he made a point to say, this is not metacognition though. And I can see his point. There is a difference. There's definitely a difference. I'd like to explore that more, you know, to see how, you know, what overlap or what can I learn from metacognition to transfer over to cybernetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me coming from an interpersonal communication lens. The languaging, the naming of things is so important. And I feel it's important, and also can contain us or constrain us.
Yes.
Sometimes, you know, if we put too tough of boundaries around what is and is not.
Yes.
Cybernetics, what is or is not metacognition. In my world, we talk about metacommunication. So, you know, we've got these, the levels, the reflexivity, the recursion, you know, is happening in multiple spaces in our lives. And so I've enjoyed this week being about understanding more of the naming. And I'm looking forward to, as we're recording right now, the very last moments of the conference before we leave. I'm leaving later today. I'm interested now to think about how I get to play with cybernetics and the ideas and the connections I've made this week. So I wonder what you're looking forward to, about what you're walking away from this conference with.
Well, like I said, it's laid a foundation. What I've done thus far in professional life and in my research, it provides a foundation for me. There are many ways that I can use metacognition. The whole wide world is open to that research topic, but using it, you know, applying it in a place where it's useful and meaningful.
Yeah.
That's my goal. That's where I want to be. So wherever that's going to be, just like the person said a few minutes ago downstairs, there are many places that are doing similar things like cybernetics where we would fit in. So, you know, my goal is to find out where those places are. I would love to do that, because then I can, you know, really kind of narrow down where I might want to plant my feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to do that, and also do other things too with my doctorate. So, but that would be the main goal for me.
Yeah. After experiencing this week and, you know, whatever other research or, you know, experiences you've had with cybernetics, I go back to this language, that the theory that my work is grounded in uses the language of better social worlds as something we make together. We make social worlds in our communication, in our relating, in our interacting. And So we have the ability to make social worlds and the responsibility to make better social worlds better. You know, we can define that together. I'm curious about what your hope is or what you see the possibilities being for cybernetics
Well,
to make, how does that contribute to our better social world of right now,
Mhm.
the better social world of this moment, and the better social world of our future?
That's a good question. I appreciate you asking me that because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Since the pandemic, I made it a point to identify and to recognize those essential tensions in society because it seems like the pandemic just opened up a whole world of new issues for us.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have a grand problem happening like that without an aftermath, residuals,
Yes.
in so many different areas. And so these essential tensions that I see, and when I say essential tensions, my operational definition is that tensions exist on two sides, not necessarily pro or con, right or wrong, good or bad, but they just exist.
Mhm.
And something needs to be done about them. And one thing I've learned in systems theory is that we try to get closer to where we want it to be, those situations to be, not necessarily fixing
Mm-hmm.
the problem. I don't look at anything like fixing a problem. And so I'm looking specifically at those essential tensions. Going forward, I would love to build that into a second order cybernetic
Mm-hmm.
type of paper or presentation, to the group or so forth. So that's one thing I really do want to do.
Mm-hmm. That resonates with me because a lot of my work in interpersonal communication is the definition that we use for dialogue is about the tension between standing firmly in my own truth, little t, truth, reality, story, experience, and at the same time being profoundly open to your truth, story, experience. And there can often feel like a tension between those two things. So I'm beginning to understand, I don't know if this resonates exactly with you, but I'm beginning to understand the way that cybernetics can be a toolbox that we carry with us and reach into in those moments of tension to be able to lean into them. Because at least in interpersonal communication, there's often, sometimes it's really hard to coordinate with people and to understand each other and to love each other and to make sense of each other and to build the better social worlds we want together when we think so differently. And so sometimes it's really challenging. But, the like tension, the toughness of that feeling, it's very easy, I think, to see that as, I'm thinking of like a traffic light with green, yellow, red. Oh, the light is red. Shouldn't go on. That's a stop sign. I should turn around. That tension, stop. When really it should be like a yield, it's like, yeah, proceed with cut, it's like, it's teaching us something and there's something there interpersonally, at least relationally. So I'm seeing cybernetics as something that gives us the tools to navigate the complexity of the reality of the tension we're experiencing every day.
Absolutely. And I like your idea about the toolbox. I often say that I have to pull out different toolboxes in my head, to make things work or, how to look at a different situation. But you hit on an important point in that communication. It is one of the most difficult areas to study.
Yeah.
I have to take a deep breath when I say that because it's not black and white.
Yeah.
Many people believe that relationships among people, shouldn't be better or, more harmonizing and so forth, but it's not easy to get there. First of all, I believe that two people need to understand like you said, if you're looking at cybernetics and you have two people who engage in that particular discipline, whatever that may be, I think it's easier to communicate. But I'm thinking, okay, what if you have one person who is versed in cybernetics and the other person isn't, has no clue, and they're coming from a different place? So what do you do then? That is a hypothetical question, but what do we do then? Do we have the person come over to our side? Where do we meet in the middle?
Yeah.
Where do we create that, where that river, that river is
Yes,
flowing,
the confluence.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's really not easy. That is a very difficult.
But also not impossible.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
And we shouldn't stop trying.
No, absolutely not. We can't stop trying. No. And we can't stop thinking about different ideas and how to bring that harmony into those conversations. I mean, without being versed in cybernetics, the language, the tools, and so forth. That's the big question. It would probably be easier to talk. It's easy for us to talk, but yeah, that's the thing that I think about. Yeah.
Audrey, is there any last words you'd like to say?
I wanted to let you know that this is my first trip abroad. Now, others
Ever?
Ever.
Incredible.
Some have said, well, Audrey, if you've been to Hawaii, that's abroad. You've been to Canada, that's abroad. The Caribbean, that's abroad. I said, yeah, but that's North America.
Yes.
And I can go into those places and find a cheesecake factory. Okay, so I want to go somewhere when I can go to a place and not find a cheesecake factory, then I have gone abroad. This is my first trip abroad.
That
Okay.
is a great measurement. I hope you've been enjoying it.
Absolutely. I found a very natural place for me.
Yeah.
With my research, the research I've done, I can see going forward with second order cybernetics, especially, with the help of Fred, and he has been wonderful in my dissertation work, and his guidance and advocacy for what I want to do is just off the chart, so I'm really grateful to him.
And what a gift for us to do that for each other. I was gonna say to each other, for each other, to be affirmative and inviting and celebratory of each other. So
Absolutely.
Audrey, thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me to be here with you today.
I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Okay.
Okay, that is all for today's episode, but remember, the conversation doesn't stop just because the episode does. There are so many ways to stay in dialogue. You can email questions, reflections, ideas, and stories to storieslived.storiestold@gmail.com for a chance to be featured in an episode. You can comment on our Instagram at storieslived, Stories Told Pod, or the CMM Institute YouTube page to engage with other listeners. And you can subscribe to the CMM Institute Substack to make sure you're getting every episode right in your inbox. Links to all these places can be found in the show notes for this episode. Other ways you can support this podcast are by following, rating, and reviewing the show wherever you listen. Plus, please share this episode with someone you want to invite into the conversation. Stories Lived, Stories Told is an initiative of the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution, an organization dedicated to furthering the coordinated management of meaning theory and practice of communication. More information about CMM can be found at cmminstitute.substack.com. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being curious, and thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abby, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told.